Day this morning with Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont. So, Mr. Sanders, thanks very much for coming back.
My pleasure, Susan.
The Senate today is going to have a procedural vote, a vote on cloture on the union card check bill. You support it.
Very strongly.
Why?
Well, I think if you look at what's happening in America today, what you see is the middle class is in rapid decline. Real wages are going down for millions of workers. Poverty is increasing. The gap between the rich and the poor is growing wider. We're losing millions of good-paying jobs. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But certainly one of the reasons is that in the workplace, workers in this country today have less clout. The number of people in unions have gone down, and it is increasingly difficult for those millions of American workers who want to join a union so that they can bargain collectively for decent wages and decent benefits. It's very hard for them to do that now because employers have virtually all of the advantages. If you're an employer, you can fire a union person who's interested in joining the union. It'll take years for the case to be processed. You could harass workers. So I think what we are trying to do now is create a more level playing field and give the working people of this country a break. Not every worker wants to join a union, but millions do. And if they want to, they should be allowed to, and they should not be harassed the way the situation is now.
The legislation has already passed the House of Representatives. Do you have 60 votes in the Senate?
Probably not. I think you'll have very strong support among the Democrats, very, very weak support among the Republicans.
And what specifically does the legislation do?
What it does is, right now, in order to form a union, you need a National Labor Relations Board election. The problem right now is that in that process, employers can often get away with firing those people who want to join a union. They can intimidate those people. What this says is that if 50% of the people in a shop, in an agency, plus one, sign a card saying they want to belong to a union, they will be able to do that. And it also provides and addresses another serious problem. Is very often when a union is organized, the company actually refused to negotiate a first contract. This has provisions in there to allow that negotiation to take place.
Some statistics that go to your point about union membership. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, looking at union membership during the last 50 years. 1955, 35% of the workers in the United States were members of a union. In 2006, that number had dropped to 12%. What's happening?
Well, a lot of things happening. As I indicated, employers, in many respects, not only in terms of workers' ability to join a union, but in terms of trade policy, in terms of immigration policy, in terms of pushing down wages, there has really been a war against the middle class and working families since the 1970s. Certainly a major reason that we have lost union membership in this country is that we have lost, just in the last 6 years alone, 3 million manufacturing jobs. A good number of them were union jobs. If you're losing several 100,000 automobile industry jobs, a lot of those are union jobs. If your steel industry is in decline, your United Steelworkers are losing membership. So as we continue a disastrous trade policy by which corporate America is able to throw American workers out on the street, move to China and move to Mexico, and our manufacturing base continues to shrink, obviously you're going to lose union members there.
Does any of that change reflect changes inside the unions themselves? Are they still offering the kinds of services to workers?
I think they are. I mean, there are better unions and not so good unions. But I think the idea, the facts are pretty clear, is that if you are a member of a union, on average, you're going to be earning substantially better wages than somebody doing the same work who is not a member of a union, and you're going to get better benefits, and you have a little bit of say about what your future is rather than being in a take-it-or-leave-it position. But in addition to all of that, at a time, I think, when working people have less and less political clout, unions have also played a strong role in making the fight to raise the minimum wage. For example, we just, as you know, a couple of weeks ago, we have finally raised the minimum wage. Not terribly high, but we've raised it to $7.25 an hour. The fight for a national health care program so that all of our people can have health care. The fight for affordable housing. The fight for young people being able to go to college. One of the strongest voices in all of those deliberations has been the unions who are representing millions of American workers and trying their best to give working people a voice at the political table.
Critics of the legislation, and one of those is the Secretary of Labor, Elaine Chao, who had a piece that was published yesterday in the Wall Street Journal There's a similarly themed editorial in the Washington Times today, suggests that what this destroys is the fundamental American concept of secret ballot elections.
Well,
Would you respond to that?
I'm very glad that the Bush administration is now worried about secret elections. They have not been terribly worried about the fact that when workers have tried to exercise their constitutional rights and their freedom to associate and their freedom to organize, they have been harassed by employers. The NLRB, in many instances, has turned its back on those workers. The Bush administration clearly has been a disaster for working families and is very strongly anti-union, so I'm not surprised at what they will say.
Here is a photograph in yesterday's roll call of Senator Sanders at a union rally on Capitol Hill, and as we look at that, I'll tell you how you can dial in and talk to him about the issue. For Republicans, the line is 202-737-0001, Democrats 202-737-0002, and our independent line for C-SPAN 202-628-0205. First call from Miami. You're on. Go ahead.
Yeah, we had a similar discussion like this on a local radio station, NPR, yesterday. And they had, down here we're going through an issue where the service employees are trying to unionize on Fisher Island, which is one of the wealthiest communities in the country. And they had an employee on there, and he made the point that union dues were 1.5%, and that was certainly worth it to unionize because he expected the benefits to greatly exceed his union cost. And he went through a very cogent economic analysis of the cost versus the benefits. And the problem was is when they got to the arguments about union, it was always equity arguments, like Fisher Island people were the richest people in the world and their loyalty and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to say, don't you expect the employers to go through the same analysis? There are costs involved with unionization. And an employer is going to go through that same analysis. And at some point, you reach a point where maybe the value added of an employee exceeds the cost. And a good example of that is the auto and union industries, and new auto plants are being opened in the South. But my question to you is, have you ever started a business, and have you ever created jobs, and what was your pay rate compared to the prevailing wage?
Thank you.
When I was a young man, I was the head of a small non-profit. But I think when you, which had very few employees, when you look at employers making a cost-benefit analysis, one of the things that we should be looking at, of course, is employers and the Chamber of Commerce and large corporations obviously don't like unions. Corporations now, in many instances, are enjoying record-breaking profits. The CEOs of large corporations now make 400 times more than their workers. They like the freedom of being able to shut down plants in this country and move to China. And certainly, they are not enthusiastic about unions who will stand up for the rights of their workers.
Cleveland, Democrats line. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Susan. I'd like to say that I enjoy C-SPAN and that I have a lot of people who are watching and calling in now. I wanted to ask the senator about work-at-will law. Ohio is a work-at-will state, and I don't know anyone who gets up in the morning and go to work 30 years, 25, 30 years, and then be handed a pink slip because the employer is rearranging or the company. At one time, Americans, we're being asked to buy American, and now we see that there's no corporate loyalty to American workers. So I want to know whose will, this work-at-will stuff, and how does it relate to union busting and holding down the wages and aspirations and hopes of the American people? Thank you very much.
And thank you for spreading the word about C-SPAN.
I do not have a lot to add to that question. That is a very profound question, and she touched on a whole lot of issues. She talked about corporate loyalty to the United States of America. And I think no better example can be given than Halliburton moving to Dubai. This is the vice president of the United States' own company. That's their loyalty. They're moving out of the United States of America. And major corporation after major corporation, whether it's General Electric, IBM, has made it very clear. They're prepared to go any place in the world if they can find cheap labor and forget about the American people who have made them into great corporations, forget about the workers who have made them profits. So what we have got to do, I think, is engage in a major political transformation so that government and the economy starts working for the middle class rather than for the very wealthiest people in this country. And I think the caller said it better than I can.
Norfolk, Virginia, independent. Go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Sanders. How you doing this morning?
I'm great.
Sir, I have nothing against unions. Absolutely not. If you want to join one, fine. If you don't want to, that's fine too. I believe part of the problem is the ungodly rules and regulations that the government has put on industry, unfair taxation, everything else. It's ungodly out here. Now, I don't know what you do when you're not working up there in Washington, but if you went out on your little vacations, whatever, and worked a job, let's say you worked in a pizza parlor, you delivered pizzas, and you went and you worked at a Walmart or something, you would and got a paycheck other than living off the American people's taxes, you would realize just how bad we are getting killed out there from taxes and regulations on industry.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you a question. Would you be willing to get rid of the 16th Amendment to the Constitution? Would you also be willing to get rid of the 17th Amendment to the Constitution? Because when they put the 17th Amendment in there, where the governors sent the representatives to Washington instead of the people electing the people to go to Washington, maybe things to get a little bit more better out there. Thank you for your time, and I'll take your answer off there. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think you're missing, if I may say so, the main point about what goes on in Washington, D.C. The reason that the middle class is shrinking, the reason that poverty is increasing, the reason that the United States has by far the most unfair distribution of wealth and income of any industrialized country on earth, the reason that we are the only major nation on earth that does not have a national health care program guaranteeing health care to all people is, in fact, the power of big money over the political process. And you talk about taxation. Well, under President Bush, we have given hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires, and it took us until last week to raise the minimum wage to $7.25 an hour over a 3-year period. We have children in this country who are living out on the streets, and we have a situation where our veterans are not getting the type of health care that they need. So I think when we look about what's going on in Washington, the real issue to focus on is the power of big money, the power of corporate America in setting an agenda which is certainly at odds with the needs of working families.
Next phone call is from Seattle. You're on for Senator Sanders.
Good morning, Mr. Sanders.
Morning.
I very much enjoy listening to you a lot, and keep in mind I'm a conservative, so socialism in government is the biggest thing that scares me, and that's why I vote to the right. But I am in alignment with you when you talk about the last sentence, for instance, that you gave the caller before this last caller that said that government needs to work together more with the economy to assure the middle class hope. And I'm somebody who's been lucky enough to get into the software industry, and I use the word been in past tense because the software industry doesn't have a union, and it's slowly declining in terms of wages. Now, I make about 6 times the minimum wage, so I'm not hurting like these people are, spending half their wage trying to get to work every day in fuel. But I am someone who is scared to see so much H-1 visas coming over here. For instance, Bill Gates is trying to lift the cap. And, you know, I look at job boards when new opportunities come out, and they're 20% less than they were just 3 years ago. The cost of education to try to go through school to get these jobs, and then to see the wage come down so drastically, that is a very important factor in the middle class.
You're exactly right. You are exactly right, and that is an issue that I have been focusing on in this whole immigration debate. There has been a lot of discussion about immigration, most of it dealing with illegal immigration. But this caller makes a very important point, that one of the aspects of this immigration bill that we have got to pay a very hard look at is this whole concept of guest worker programs and a substantial increase in the H-1B visa, which I am strongly opposed to. The idea that in the United States of America today, we need more people to come from other countries who will work at high-tech jobs, whether it's computer programming or other information technology jobs, because we just don't have the workers in America, is absolute nonsense. What Microsoft, what Dell, what IBM are trying to do is to lower wages in the high-tech area, and in fact, as the caller indicated, they are succeeding. So when you look about the decline of the middle class and the increase of poverty, you're looking at a trade policy in which corporate America says, we're going to throw American workers out on the street, we're going abroad. You look at an immigration policy which says we're going to bring in a lot of cheap labor into this country to lower wages in this country. And then, as the caller also indicates, with the cost of college soaring, with financial aid not keeping up in any way with college inflation, more and more young people unable to go to college. We have some serious problems in this country, and that is why we need a radical reversal in national priorities. A previous caller talked about taxation. Well, this president wants to repeal the estate tax, all of whose benefits will go to the wealthiest 0.3%, $1 trillion over 20 years to the very wealthiest people in this country. I think that is dumb. I think we have to reinvest in America, create good paying jobs here, and educate our people here.
Earlier in our program, we had Ed Lazier, chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. They brought a new study on immigration about the effect on the economy. Here's one of the statistics that they shared. Since 1990, immigration has boosted the average wage of Native Americans by between 0.7 and 1.8%.
I, frankly, in all due respect, don't believe it. There are other studies out there that say that immigration, especially among low-wage workers, but also among higher-wage workers, as the recent caller indicated, has lowered wages. A study from Harvard by Professor Borjas indicated that immigration has lowered wages for low-wage workers by between 4 and 5%. Look, common sense suggests that if you're making $7 or $8 an hour and you're bringing in a lot of people who are prepared to work for even less, your wages are going to go down, and in fact, that is the case.
Warrenton, Oregon, Democrats line for Senator Bernie Sanders.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, sir. I am a member of organized labor. I'm a journeyman plumber. I'm a veteran, and I was always under the impression as time went on, things were supposed to get better. And everything you have said has absolutely the truth. And I just want to say that out of all the people that I've watched on the screen, you are the one that is just on target. And I appreciate this. And I certainly hope you can turn the rudder up there in Washington, because us working people are taking a real butt kicking. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. And let me just pick up on the point that this gentleman made. Despite all of the assertions of the Bush administration, and they're on TV every day, the economy is booming, the economy is robust. I wonder where they came up with the word robust, but we hear it every day. Or these statements that immigration is not lowering wages. The American people don't believe it. There was a Gallup poll that just came out. 70% of the American people perceive that the economy is getting worse. Another poll came out not so long ago where, by a 2-to-1 majority, people have said that life for the middle class in America is in decline. We are a nation in trouble. We have got to change our national priorities so that hard-working people can earn a decent income, can actually take a vacation once in a while. My God, maybe even have health care, maybe be able to send their kids to college. I don't think that's asking too much. But in fact, what we've had is a situation where the economy is doing extraordinarily well for the people on top and not for anybody else. And we've got to change that.
Kansas City, Missouri, independent line. Good morning.
Hi there, Congressman. It's good to speak with you.
Senator, I've been promoted.
I've been a Teamster for 3 years. I've been a truck driver for 15 years. And I might start off by saying it sure has been nice for getting paid for the work that I've been doing for the last 3 years, because I did a whole lot of work for my employer before, and I didn't get compensated for it. But what I'd like to say is I cannot believe I heard what I heard yesterday. President Bush was talking about this card check law that you guys are talking about now, and he said if it passes, it would take away an American's right to vote. I just found that to be such a despicable, lying statement. Our right to vote is given to us in the Constitution for our senators and congressmen and presidents, but this has nothing to do with an American's right to vote. I just thought it was disingenuous when he said that. Thank you.
Caller, are you driving your truck right now?
Yes, I am. I'm driving in California.
Okay, thanks.
Well, let me just, I think one ceases to be shocked about anything this president says, and I think very sadly, and I say this with no joy in my heart, that this administration will probably go down in history as if not the worst administration in American history, certainly one of them. And in every other area, whether it's the economy in which he attacks the needs of working people, cuts programs for the neediest Americans while he provides huge tax breaks for billionaires, whether it is global warming, whether it's the fact that 6 million more Americans have lost their health insurance since he has been in office. I'm afraid that history will not judge this president kindly.
We're talking to Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Our next call for him on a day when the Senate is going to be holding a cloture vote on the union legislation is from Miami, Republican line. Good morning.
Hi. Good morning to both of you. My name is Aurora, and I am a Republican. Yeah, there are good things and bad things on both sides of the coin. And I know that you're independent, so of course you're an independent because you have other ideas that might be good for this country. And sometimes I feel like being an independent myself. But the point that I would like to make is we are talking about union and open to see who is voting for who. And I don't agree with that. That is very un-American and very unconstitutional. I know that we have a lot of Bush bashing this morning. I think he's done some good things, and there's been a lot of bad things. But, you know, with every presidency, we have seen many things go down, you know, in America. I don't think Bush would be called the worst president in America. I mean, there was a lot of good things that were done. He inherited a lot of things from the Clinton administration. We can't forget that. But we have to, most importantly, in the union, my husband is treasurer and secretary of the union. He's a federal officer, and he, you know, holds highly that it is important to keep the ballot secret. You know, I think that that's something that should be taken in serious consideration.
Thank you. Let's pick up from there.
Okay, I appreciate the concern of the caller. The problem that we're having right now is under the current process, it is very, very, very difficult for those workers who in fact want to join a union to be able to do so. Because what the process allows is an employer to say, oh, listen, I want you to come with me into the back room, and I want to talk to you a little bit, and I want to show you a video. And by the way, what you should know is if you vote for a union, we may have to shut down the plant. And oh, by the way, did you know this? And oh, by the way, that person has been fired. And they intimidate people. And you have a process now which is not a level playing field, which is very much skewed to the benefit of the employer. And I think we've got to change that.
Next call, Naples, Florida, Democrats line.
Hello. Senator
Sanders.
I know who he is because I followed him all along, and I just admire him so much. It's just a thrill to talk to you, and everything people, you know, have been calling to you about this morning, I certainly agree with. I mean, my husband was the vice president of a refinery back in Ohio, worked there for 37 years, so we know what's going on with this oil industry. And they had a union there. They had a wonderful union until they went with the independent. But even then, they had a union, and they represented the workers. We're down here. We retired. We've been coming to Naples since 1960. We saw it develop into this builders development. The commissioners are in their pocket. We have illegals doing construction work on $1 million homes down here. They're getting free health care. Our Medicare bill, I watched the Medicare bill. I can't even talk because I'm so 3 years ago and saw what happened to that and our prescriptions. We had prescriptions with our secondary, Aetna at the time, and my husband worked, you know, as a beneficiary. And now with this, we haven't gone to Medicare Part D because it's going to be worse doing this. We're waiting and waiting for Congress to try to do something about repairing that.
Let me. This is an issue. I spent 16 years in the House and dealt with the pharmaceutical industry almost every day. When you talk about powerful special interest, yeah, you're talking about the oil company that's ripping off the American people. You're talking about banks that are charging people 28% interest rates on credit cards and so forth and so on. But at the top of that list is the pharmaceutical industry. And I would tell the caller that within the last 10 years, if she can believe it, I don't want her to fall off her chair here, the pharmaceutical industry has spent over $900 million on lobbyists to make sure that you pay by far the highest prices in the world for your prescription drugs. Make sure that we can't, our pharmacists or prescription drug distributors can't re-import medicine from Canada or from Europe, the same exact medicine made by the same factories, but in which we are charged 2 or 3 times more than our friends in Canada or Europe. They are very, very powerful, and that's what we're dealing with here. And that's why we need to organize, we need to educate, we need to make some fundamental changes in the way Congress does business.
Spooner, Wisconsin. Good morning. Your question.
Good morning. Sir, you're the reason I'm starting to call myself an independent. you are so on in what you're talking about. That one caller, can't remember where he was from. He was a union person. He was also a vet. Well, I followed the same path. And in my union days, everybody had $1 in their pocket. Everybody. And I can't believe what's going on now. You see people out there that are making less money than I did back in the 60s.
That's right.
It's incredible.
It is incredible. What you're seeing, and again, it is not talked about, and one of the reasons, let me open up have your phone lines really bopping off the hook now, because a lot of that has to do with corporate control over the media. So there is a corporate mentality is that they echo Bush's line to a large degree. Oh, things are going pretty well. The economy is growing, etc. You know, Bush will tell you how great things are doing, but the reality is this caller just made is that, if you could believe it, the average male today is earning substantially less than what his father made. Despite a huge increase in worker productivity and explosions in technology, people are working longer hours for low wages. When I was a kid growing up, one worker in a family, in those days usually the man, could work 40 hours a week, earn enough money to pay the bills. Today, very few middle-class families have that luxury. 2 people. The idea of a 2 or 3 week paid vacation in America is becoming part of ancient history.
We have 3 minutes left with Senator Sanders. Let's go to Middletown, Maryland next. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks for calling in.
All right, just a couple things. First of all, the senator was on to something early, but I think he really lost the message. As a conservative Republican and a business owner, I do agree that there has to be something better in place. One of the previous callers did make the point. I, too, am in the software industry, but during the Clinton administration, with the influx of H-1B visas, I saw rates really go down, and we were just inundated with immigrant workers who were just, working for a lot less. And that's going to be true about just about anything where we have this type of immigration, and he's made that point. But the part that I really disagree with is the rhetoric he uses and others in the Senate and in the House when they debate something like this. You lose us when you use this rhetoric, the Bush bashing, and the tiresome arguments about the rich getting richer, the poor are poor, and so on. All right? There is a struggle, and you're just using so many of the polls that you want to use in your favor to talk about how the economy's not doing well for some people or most people, yet it's doing well for a lot of other people.
Okay, I'm going to jump in only because we have 1 minute left.
Let me just answer. Well, I mean, I think there is a growing understanding, as the caller indicated, that H-1B visas are having the impact of lowering wages for professional workers. I think we're in agreement on that. I have to say, in all due respect, that we are in disagreement, if I understood what he said at the end of his discussion, and that is, I do not believe that the economy is doing better for most people. I mean, the facts are pretty clear. And I'm not saying this is all Bush's fault. I mean, he inherited a lot of trends which were moving in the wrong direction. I think he's exacerbated the problems. Poverty is increasing. Since Bush has been president, over 5 million more Americans have slipped into poverty. Real wages for millions of American workers are going down. Median family income is going down. The gap between the rich and the poor is growing wider. That's not my view. Those are the facts.
And we are out of time. Thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure.
Senate in session. You can watch it live on